Unless you already have a new job locked down and lined up, it's probably not the best idea to quit your job in 2024 because the jobs market is not exactly what they're telling you it is. Now, the first clue we have of this is at the same time, we have announcements of layoffs happening while we have reports saying that jobs growth is happening like crazy. Amazon's Twitch is cutting hundreds of employees that amount to 35% of its staff. Great American Media is going through layoffs. Duolingo, the language learning app, is laying off 10% of its contract workers. Uber Freight is slashing jobs. BlackRock is cutting 3% of its global workforce. The NFL is cutting employees. And companies like Nike, Intel, and Citigroup are all planning layoffs for 2024. So how do we have that happening at the same time as we see these blowout jobs report numbers? Case in point, US payrolls increased by 216,000 just in December, which beat expectations. As a result, the US unemployment rate is showing to be at record lows. In fact, we have to go all the way back to the late 60s before we see the unemployment rate at a lower point than where we're at today. So how can all of these things be true at the same time? Well, on one hand, they're not actually all true at the same time. And on the other hand, it's just a matter of how you measure. So I'm going to explain exactly where these numbers come from, exactly how this works. And just in case there's anybody out there watching this video who actually works for one of these useless government bureaucracies, don't worry. I'm going to explain how this works in simple, smooth brain terms. Got to be inclusive, right? I got my very first job when I turned 16 and I worked at Harkins Theaters. I was making $7.10 per hour. And I distinctly remember, number one, my first day working. It was an 8-hour shift. And by the end of it, I felt like I had just gone through a torture session. Sweeping popcorn up off of carpet with brooms that are probably 10 cents a piece, don't work very well. Picking up trash from people who just leave all of their trash in the movie theater. And by the end of it, my feet hurt from standing all day. And to this day, it is actually the worst job I ever had in my life. And my first paycheck was $32 gross and my net was around $16 or $17. And I looked at the pay stub and saw that they took something out called Medicare, Social Security. And so I went to them and I said, hey, you made a mistake. I'm not getting something called Social Security or Medicare. Like, why are you charging me for this? And they just laughed. They were like, welcome to taxes. So fast forward, I don't know, a year later, something like that. And I got my second job, which I actually got at the exact same time because they were both part-time jobs. My second job was a landscape installation job. So me and a couple other guys on the crew, we'd go into a house, we'd go into a backyard and we'd install a new landscape. So we'd put in gravel, we'd dig the holes, plant trees, put in the irrigation, everything. And to this day, that was actually the hardest job I ever had. But I didn't care. I was very happy because that job paid $9 an hour, which at the time felt like I was rich. And I was able to do both of these jobs at the same time because they were part-time for a couple of months before I headed off to college. So let me ask you a question about this situation. What was my personal impact on the jobs market? Well, the number one way that you see people address this question is simply by going to the businesses themselves and asking them how many employees they had. So if somebody had gone to Harkins Theaters at the point at which they hired me, then Harkins Theaters would have said, yes, we added 1 employee. And so the government bureaucrat would have written down on his little form that we added 1 job. And then he would have gone down the street to the landscape installation company and he would have said, hey, what's your situation with jobs? And my boss would have said, hey, we added 1 employee. So the government bureaucrat would have marked on his check sheet that we added yet another job. So from the bureaucrat's perspective, 2 jobs would have been added to the economy and it would have looked like great economic strength. This way of counting jobs is what's known as the establishment survey. And it's where we get numbers like this showing December payrolls increasing by 216,000. But if you have any critical thinking skills, you're probably looking at that and thinking, well, wait, that actually doesn't count as 2 jobs. That's 1 person working 2 part part-time jobs. And you'd be absolutely correct. And this is where the second way of measuring jobs comes in, which is actually asking people how many jobs they have. The establishment survey obviously showed an increase in jobs for December, while the household survey, which asks individuals how many jobs they hold, showed a decline of 683,000 jobs, which is the largest loss since April of 2020, when the government forced people to stop working. As if that wasn't bad enough on its own, if somebody is working 3 jobs, that's not even counted in the household survey. It maxes out at 2 jobs per person. Now, if we follow this train of thought a little bit farther, we can see that the next thing this highlights is that people are losing full-time jobs left and right, and they're replacing them with multiple part-time jobs. In fact, full-time employment fell in December by the most since, again, April of 2020, which again was when the government forced people to stop working and also incentivized them to by sending them stimulus checks. So if we take out this April of 2020 low, the fall in full-time employment that happened in December of 2023 is almost unprecedented. Here we can see a big divergence between the number of people who are working full-time is dropping versus the number of people working part-time is rising. This means that the number of people who are holding multiple jobs is higher than it's been in years. As if all of that wasn't bad enough, even if we want to take it at face value and just look at the establishment survey, which claims that December saw an increase in 216,000 jobs. Let's take a look at how accurate this survey has been over the course of the last year. In 2023, 10 of the 12 months jobs numbers were revised downward. If we take a look at the cumulative effect of all of the downward revisions that happened during the year of 2023, it means that 1/4, 25% of all the jobs that were claimed to have been created during 2023 were not actually there. They were revised away 1 or 2 months after the report came out. But that still leaves 75% of those job gains that happened. So we have to ask, where were those jobs? Because that actually matters too. It turns out that 60% of the jobs that were created in 2023 were either government or healthcare, which in the United States is government. We can see industries like transportation and warehousing and information all lost jobs, and the massive dominating net increase in jobs came strictly from healthcare and from government. Now, for anybody out there who is thinking, well, those jobs are still necessary and it's still a net gain, even if it's not ideal, it's still a net gain that we had those jobs. I'm gonna ask you to put on your thinking cap for a minute while we go to our imaginary hypothetical island economy to see how this plays out in reality. Imagine there are 10 people who are deserted on an island, and it just so happens that one person is very good at fishing. Another person is very good at building huts. Another person is good at climbing trees, and so they can climb up and go get coconuts. Another person is good at finding and filtering stream water for drinking water. You can see how this goes. There are 10 people, and pretty much every single one of them has some natural talents or skills that they're able to use to provide some value to themselves and to others. The person who fishes doesn't want just fish, and so they're gonna trade some of those fish for some coconuts. They're gonna trade some of those fish for some huts. Likewise, the people who build huts are able to get coconuts and fish for building the huts. It's a great little economy. But there's one person who doesn't have any skills that they can produce something that other people want. I'm gonna call this person the bureaucrat. So the bureaucrat sits down on a rock and he thinks, hey, the person who collects the drinking water wants some coconuts because they have no coconuts. But the person who collects the coconuts doesn't want any water because they get all of the drinking water they want from their own coconuts. So the self-appointed bureaucrat looks around and thinks, my value that I'm gonna provide is to force people to share in the way that I see fit. So I'm going to tell the person who collects the coconuts that they must share one coconut with the person who collects the water. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, this is still a net gain because there's somebody that's forcing equality and forcing some sharing to happen. And certainly when looking at it from the standpoint only of the person who collects the water, yes, that person is better off because they get the water and they get the coconuts. But we're forgetting the fact that the self-appointed bureaucrat is themselves not producing anything of value. So not only are they forcing a distribution that wouldn't happen absent the bureaucrat, but the rest of the island must produce an excess in order to support the bureaucrat. And so while there is some good, some gain happening for some players like the bureaucrat and some good happening for the person who collects the water, the entire island is much worse off than they would be without the bureaucrat there in the first place, because there would be much more abundance, more goods available for them to share with themselves if they didn't have to to support the bureaucrat. So I'm not claiming that every government job added and every healthcare job added is only bad. What I am claiming is the economy is worse off as a result of those jobs existing than they would be if those jobs simply didn't exist. Because every single one of those jobs that exists must be funded by taking away from the productive capacity of somebody else who's producing in the economy in order to pay for those who are not. Now let's bring this full circle to talk about your job and your employment situation. Number one, do not quit your job if you don't already have something lined up. Most job postings that are out today are ghost jobs. Ghost jobs are openings that are posted by companies that will never be filled. Sometimes the companies want to make themselves look good. Sometimes it's hiring managers that need to fill quotas on applications and interviews, but ghost jobs are a thing. And so if you look out at all the job postings and think, hey, it's an employee's market, I'm gonna quit my job and just hope that I land something soon, that's a bad idea. Number two, if you do have another job lined up, you should almost certainly take it. Studies have shown time and time again that the more you switch jobs, the more you will earn compared to people who stick with the same job. This is because it's much easier to negotiate for higher salaries and pay increases when switching to a new company than it is to just get a raise in your current role or in a promotion. And number three, no matter what the economy is like, there are always opportunities to make more money, increase your income, and multiply your wealth. This is one of the things that I teach in Heresy Financial University, how to build a six-figure side hustle while you have a full-time job. This gives you an escape plan if you want it. Certainly, if you'd rather, you can just enjoy the extra income of a full-time job and a six-figure side hustle, or you can use it to escape the rat race, fire your 9-to-5, go all in on your business, and live life on your own terms. Spend more time with your family, actually control how much income you make, not have it artificially capped by your employer. I teach the exact playbook that I used to go from $0 in income, zero social media presence, no flywheel, nothing existing, to growing my business to over 6 figures a month. If that sounds like something that you'd like to take action on this year, join Heresy Financial University. Link is in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.